Welcome to the Helping Families Be Happy podcast, where we explore the often messy world of family, love, and relationships. I'm your host for this podcast, Adina Oberman, a mom, former preschool teacher, picture book lover, and member of the Famili marketing team. I'm also the creator of Big Books for Little Hands, a site dedicated to connecting parents and teachers with the best books for the ups and downs of life with young children. We welcome today's guest, Christopher Robbins. Christopher is the founder of Famili, along with his wife, Michelle Robbins. They are parents to 9 children. Christopher and Michelle founded Famili with the mission to help families be happy. Christopher not only leads Famili, but is also an author with more than 30 books published. Referring to himself as a jack of all trades, but a master of none, he's a voracious reader and loves to explore anything and everything. He is also an avid fly fisherman and backpacker, and sometimes musician. He currently resides in the Central Valley of California. Space Train is his 34th published title. This episode aligns with the Famili's habits: read together and learn together. You can learn more about the Famili's 10 Habits of Happy Families by going to the Habit Hub blog on familius.com. Welcome, Christopher. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me. I would add play together, because when you're up there looking at the stars, you're playing.
That's right. It is all about play with kids.
Yeah.
So we wanted to chat with you today about Space Train because we're very excited about this title and you are the author. So can you tell us, how do we get families to look up?
Yeah. Let me just say quick, just my family, I was very blessed, very fortunate that my stepfather was a great player. He just loved to play. And he bought a boat and we would go to Lake Powell, which is on the Arizona-Utah border. And I remember one year we were on this boat and I was looking up and I couldn't sleep. And it was in August. And there were just an unbelievable number of meteors going on. It was just this unbelievable meteor shower. It was like multiple meteors every minute. And I'd never seen anything like that. And I was just fascinated. I later learned that's called the Perseid meteor shower, which happens every year in August. So if you just look that up, you can schedule that in. It's your family camping trip to go find a place that doesn't have any light pollution and look up and you can see that. It's really quite amazing. So how do we get our families to look up? Let's put down the phones, first of all. But the phone we'll talk about later. Now, phones have some great apps that allow us to help us in our constellation and planet exploration. But put down the phone, go outside and look up. And throughout history, people have been fascinated by just looking up and seeing those stars and those planets. And now we can even see things like the satellites going through the sky. So it's really quite fun. So that's my secret. Go outside, look up, put the phones down for a little bit.
It may seem obvious, but putting those phones down is harder than it seems. And I'm sure as a father of 9, you probably have experienced that yourself, that we really do have to get our kids and even ourselves to put our phones down to experience real life. And what an amazing memory that you made with your family looking up that has made an impact on you and lasted now and influenced you to write this book. So that's pretty incredible and just shares for our listeners what the power of putting the phones down and looking up is. So since you have experience with looking at the stars, can you share what you know that is visible to the naked eye?
Oh, there's a lot that's visible to the naked eye. You don't have to have a fancy telescope to really appreciate the art. So you can just look up. And again, I recommend as parents or as older siblings or aunts, uncles, grandparents, friends and family, that you just be curious. Curiosity is contagious, right? So you can say, hey, look at that. What is that? Look at that bright star. What do you think that is, right? Or can you find for me the Big Dipper? And can you show me where the North Star is? And did you know the North Star just stays there? Everything orbits around it. Doesn't orbit, but that's not really what happens, but it stays. And for centuries, for thousands of years, people have used the North Star to navigate, right? And mariners have used the stars to navigate in the middle of the ocean how do they even know where they are, right? So the stars are just fascinating if you just think about the history. So just be curious and let curiosity spill over to your family. Now, if you look up, what can you see? Obviously, you can see the moon. Everybody knows that you can see the moon, right? And it has different phases. And it's interesting to see it from the new moon to the full moon. But you can also see planets like Venus and Jupiter. You can see star clusters. You can even see the Andromeda Galaxy on a really dark night if there's no light pollution. And you don't really need to be a telescope to be an amateur astronomer. So you just need your eyes and a sense of wonder to look up. And an easy one to see is usually Venus. And it's usually very bright. And you can spot, you think, that's a really bright star, but no, it's a planet. Mars is a lot of fun to see sometimes throughout the year because it does look red. And you can see Jupiter and Saturn. So there's a lot you can see. Right now, this podcast, it's middle of March of 2025. And in the Western United States, if you can see Jupiter, Mars, Venus, and Mercury a little harder, all visible from the Western US right now. So with the naked eye.
With the naked eye?
With the naked eye.
No telescope. Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah.
You mentioned the Andromeda Galaxy, which is my favorite. I recently learned about this because I went actually on a stargazing event with my daughter and our Girl Scout troop. And they had some amateur astronomers there with some very high powered telescopes. And they were explaining to the troop and to me that the light in the Andromeda Galaxy is actually 2.5 million light years away. And that was just really mind blowing to think about the light that we're looking at is that far away and has been around that long. So
we're looking back in time. We really look at just the sun. We're looking basically 9 minutes in the past. We're looking at the moon as maybe 2.5 seconds in the past. We're looking at the Andromeda Galaxy. We're looking 2.5 million years ago. What's happened in those 2.5 million years? It's interesting.
Yeah, it's incredible to think about. And I think really gives kids or even adults who don't have as much experience with astronomy a lot to think about. It really, there's a lot to be said for giving perspective when you think about space and how big we are, not just on this planet, but us as people in comparison to everything in the rest of the galaxy. I think that's an important experience for kids at this age. In the early years, they're very egocentric, not in a negative way, but just in their ability to think about themselves. And then as they get older, they're able to think about others and start to learn about their place in the world and thinking about who they are in comparison to everything else that's out there is a really great way to start thinking about perspective. I mentioned my favorite galaxy, but do you have a favorite star, planet, or constellation?
Oh, that's a really good question. Everybody likes Saturn because Saturn is this really cool planet, right? With all the rings of rock and dust. Let's see. If I were to pick a constellation, I would say Orion. And the reason I like Orion is my family, we used to go down to Canyonlands, which is outside of Moab, Utah, before anybody else had discovered it. Now it's just really crowded. And it would be pitch dark. And my mother would like to show me, she said, look, let's find Orion. And you can find Orion from the 3 belts. One of them, his name is Betelgeuse, which I think is cool. Don't say that 3 times, though. I never say Betelgeuse 3 times. No, twice in a row.
Don't say it again.
Don't say it again. So that's where we would look at that, the belt. That's Orion's belt. And if you've watched Men in Black, that has a double entendre, right? It's found on Orion's belt. And that was always fun to see. Maybe it's just memories of my mother and looking up at the stars and seeing that constellation. And I would add, from what you said, looking up and looking at the sky and getting this idea that we have this planet that is sitting in this immense universe, our own galaxy, which is one of billions upon billions of galaxies. It gives us a sense of conservation. So we are on an island in the middle of the universe, and we don't have an easy way to get to another island. So we need to take care of this one.
That's very true.
Yeah.
That's very true. Talk about taking on perspectives, right? It really makes it feel personal, which I think it can be difficult when you're talking about conservation and taking care of our planet with young kids. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Do you have any online resources that you'd recommend we can explore when families are engaging in what is beyond our sky?
Yeah, absolutely. And let's just go back. Again, maybe you want to go beyond just looking up with your naked eye. A great pair of binoculars, they're super fun to look at the moon because with great pair of binoculars, you can see those craters and the detail of those craters. Particularly if you look at the edge, like where the moon is going into shadow, you can really see these rocky edges of these craters. And that's really cool. So take out a set of binoculars and just look up. And then if you're interested more, you can find a local astronomy club who will have great telescopes, and they will be more than happy to introduce you to this opportunity to look up. In terms of resources, if you don't know, you should go to nasa.com. NASA.com has great resources, access to the Hubble site, access to the James Webb Space Telescope, which is that new telescope that we're viewing way out and seeing just amazing pictures of our galaxy and beyond. So that's a great place to go. There's also, I have an app on my phone called, I think it's called Skyview. Let's see if it is Skyview. Yeah, it's called Skyview. And I like Skyview. It says explore the universe. I can just point it at the sky, at a particular star, and it can tell me what that star is. It has its name plus its scientific name. And you can find the International Space Station. You can find other satellites that are going through. And even if you're looking for something and it's on the other side of the Earth, you just point it down and you can see where maybe the sun is. It's midnight here, but you can see where the sun is on the other side, right? So I think that's a fun tool to use. And so if you do have your phone and your kids are on the phone, you say, hey, let's just look at this. So now we can do both. We can look up, we can see the sky, we can use our phone to give us more information, and it got some background music that makes it cool and haunting, so fun too. But so I would recommend that app. Stellarium is also another one. I haven't used it as much, so I don't know as much about it, but I know that is one. But again, I would just turn people over to nasa.gov, and that'd be a great resources to begin your exploration of the stars from your computer, but then go outside.
There's another website that I learned about called earthsky.org, and it's a free site. And if you type in your zip code, it knows what the night sky should look like at that time of year in your location, but it will also tell you how much cloud cover you can expect. So you can find out if it's a good evening for stargazing or if you're just going to have too much cloud cover to see much. But I think it's good because when you're going out in the dark with your family, you might want to make sure it's worth it.
In fact, last year, just talking about that, I was pretty disappointed because we did have cloud cover. But there were a couple times last year where people in the lower 48 were able to see the aurora borealis, which is the northern lights. And my son and his wife, they got some beautiful photos of this in northern Utah, which is pretty low, but they could see it all the way from there. Again, having a site like that, that's a great activity. As a family, let's see what we can see this weekend when we go camping or when we're going out. And now we can be prepared to go look for something.
Yeah, the aurora borealis being visible here in the Northeast, where I am in Connecticut, was everywhere. We had too much cloud cover the couple times we went out to look, but I know that a lot of people were able to see it, which is pretty incredible. As we begin to wind down, can you please share where our listeners can find you online and where they can find your newest book?
Yeah. So I try to keep myself fairly private, but you can find me on Famili.com. You can find me on the Famili Instagram channel, which is, you just look up #FamiliBooks. You can find me on LinkedIn, Christopher Robbins, and happy to connect. I've mentioned that in addition to Space Train, which is a really fun 52-inch board book that folds out, it can be a beautiful accoutrement into a child's room. But we also have S's for Space, a really fun board book. And we also have just released In the Solar System, which is a really beautiful picture book that kind of anthropomorphizes elements into the universe, our planets, in terms of the poem. Is it Into the Meadow? I can't remember.
Over in the Meadow.
Over in the Meadow. That's right. So a really fun book there. So there's lots of, if you're interested in the stars and looking up, then Les always has a book to help you.
And they are such fabulous books. And we're looking forward to sharing Space Train with our audience as soon as it's released. As we conclude today's podcast, I'd like to thank Famili for their support in bringing this podcast to your ears and your heart. We'd be thrilled if you subscribed to the podcast and left us a review. And when you're ready for that next amazing book adventure, we'd be honored if you choose a book from Famili's. One step at a time, we can make the world a healthier place.